Imagine you're standing on this dusty street corner in a really bustling working-class neighborhood. It's a crisp morning in Sudan. The year is 1985.
Yeah, and the morning sun is just starting to bake the pavement beneath your feet. You can literally smell the earthiness of the dust getting kicked up in the street.
Right, and all around you, there's this ambient, sort of rhythmic clatter. Shopkeepers are rolling up those heavy metal storefront doors to start the day. It's peaceful. It's an entirely ordinary Tuesday.
Until it isn't.
Exactly, because in a fraction of a second, that peace just shatters. There's this sudden, aggressive roar of a motorcycle engine ripping through the street, drowning out the shopkeeper.
And that's immediately followed by the piercing, just desperate screams of a young woman.
You turn toward the sound, right? And a crowd is already tentatively forming around you, completely paralyzed by what they're witnessing.
Because a man is forcefully trying to drag this beautiful young woman onto the back of his motorcycle. And she is fighting for her life.
She's screaming at the top of her lungs for literally anyone to help her. And he's shouting back, just barking at the crowd to stay away, claiming that he's an undercover police officer making a lawful arrest.
It's just massive chaos. The standoff reaches this boiling point. The crowd pushes back. Their protective instincts are kicking in. They want to see his ID. They demand a badge.
But he doesn't have one. He just insists that he works at the local police precinct just down the road.
Oh.
It's this incredibly tense, dangerous stalemate.
Right up until a mysterious young woman steps out of the crowd, locks eyes with the people, and vouches for him.
Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to this deep dive. Today, our mission is to unravel one of the most baffling, mysterious, and ultimately tragic cases in Sudan's modern history. We are looking at the 1985 disappearance of Amira al-Hakim.
But to truly grasp the weight of this case, you really have to understand the environment of the era. If we connect this to the bigger picture, 1985 in Sudan was a time of immense political and social turbulence.
It was the tail end of a heavily policed authoritarian regime, right?
Exactly. The authorities held sweeping powers, and the public held a deep, ingrained fear of state security. Challenging an undercover officer in the street wasn't just frowned upon, it carried severe, real-world risks. Paranoia basically reigned supreme.
Right, because this wasn't just some local tragedy. This became a national trauma. I mean, imagine you're living in a city where a prominent, highly visible person can just vanish into thin air on her way to school, leaving behind a trail of absolute silence.
That's terrifying.
It is. So let's go back to the morning of the vanishing. Amira al-Hakim was from a wealthy, highly influential Sudanese family. She was stunningly beautiful, frequently mistaken for someone much older than a student.
She leaves her home for school on a totally normal morning, and she simply never arrives.
And this is where the agonizing ticking clock begins. Put yourself in the shoes of her family. Hours turn into days. They immediately go to the police, but there is zero trace.
Nothing. There's no ransom note. There are no witnesses coming forward. It is just an echoing void.
But because of the prominence of Amira's family, they actually have the resources to force this case onto the front pages of the national press.
Which is a double-edged sword. On one hand, you have massive awareness. On the other hand, you are amplifying the terror across the entire Sudanese public.
Because if the daughter of a powerful family can vanish in broad daylight without a single clue, who is actually safe?
Exactly. The authorities are under immense pressure to deliver answers, but every single lead is a dead end, week after week.
Until exactly 1 week later. A strange, seemingly completely unrelated article appears in a local newspaper. It's essentially a human interest piece detailing a bizarre street fight in a working-class neighborhood.
And this brings us right back to that chaotic street scene we described at the very beginning. A local journalist writes about a man on a motorcycle claiming to be an undercover officer arresting a female suspect.
The crowd pushes back, demanding ID. The man has none, but insists he's stationed at the local precinct.
And then, the mysterious vouch. The strange girl who steps out of the crowd to tell everyone that she knows him and that he really is a police officer.
Let's talk about the crowd for a second, though, because, I mean, why didn't they just rush him? There were dozens of them and only one of him.
You really have to look at the psychological state of those bystanders. It is a textbook example of compliance psychology mixed with the bystander effect.
They can clearly see this young woman is in distress.
Yes, but in 1985 Sudan, you do not lightly interfere with law enforcement. The moment he claimed to be an officer, he triggered their conditioned fear of authority. They are trapped between their moral compass and their sheer terror of the state apparatus.
And because of that fear, They force a compromise. It's a compromise that probably felt completely reasonable, even protective to them at the time.
They decide the girl will not ride on the back of the motorcycle.
Right. Instead, they hail a civilian taxi. The screaming girl will ride in the taxi to the local precinct, and the quote-unquote officer must follow behind on his motorcycle.
It is a devastatingly well-intentioned compromise. They think they are ensuring her safety by putting her in a neutral vehicle with a civilian driver.
They sort of outsource their courage to the taxi driver, hoping the system would just sort it out.
But as we will see, this compromise is exactly what seals Amira's fate.
Because the police read this random newspaper article and a detective connects the dots. The description of the screaming girl in the street fight perfectly matches the missing Amira al-Hakim.
The timeline matches. The physical description matches perfectly.
So they immediately bring in the journalist who wrote the piece. He tells them he didn't witness it himself. He actually got the story from a relative who was walking by.
So the police track down their relative, who then leads them to a local shop owner who had a front row seat to the entire altercation.
And when they show that shop owner a photograph of Amira al-Hakim, he positively identifies her. That was the girl in the street.
Finally, a massive breakthrough. The police rushed to the local precinct mentioned in the standoff, fully expecting to find a record of her arrest, or at least a record of the officer who brought her in.
Imagine you're that detective. You walk up to the front desk, expecting to finally solve the biggest case in the country. You open the logbook.
And you hit a terrifying brick wall. They tear through the records at the precinct. Nothing. No girl matching Amira's description was brought in that day.
No undercover officer reported an incident or an arrest.
Furthermore, there is absolutely no officer matching the suspect's description who owns a private motorcycle working at that station.
Wait, but if he's an officer from a totally different directorate, how did he know to use that specific precinct to bluff the crowd?
That's the chilling part. He didn't. He just relied on the fact that citizens rarely fact-check a badge on the street. He used the perceived authority of the uniform to bypass the crowd's protection, and then he just vanished.
But the crowd only believed him because of the girl who vouched for him.
Right. The authorities realized this mysterious woman is the key to everything. They go back to the shop owner, and he notes a crucial, bizarre detail.
This girl who stepped out of the crowd.
Yeah, she was wearing highly flashy, heavily decorated, almost wedding-like attire.
Here's where it gets really interesting. She's wearing nightclub or wedding attire on a Tuesday morning in a working-class neighborhood. The police deduce that she must work in the local nightlife scene, perhaps returning home from a late shift at a club.
And remember, this is an era before social media or digital facial recognition. So begins an absolutely grueling, analog, psychological grind.
The detectives take this shop owner and they drag him from nightclub to nightclub night after night.
They are peering through thick cigarette smoke and flashing neon lights, scanning hundreds of faces, looking for one specific woman.
Until finally he spots her. The police apprehend her and she breaks during questioning. She admits she just happened to be walking by, saw the fight, and recognized the man from the nightlife scene.
And she gives them a name, Abdel Sadiq Yusuf.
This name breaks the case wide open. They pull the suspect profile. Abdel Sadiq Yusuf is not a ghost. He is a real police officer.
But he has been suspiciously absent from his post at a different directorate for 2 months. He owns a private motorcycle. He matches the description perfectly. He is the kidnapper.
The police know they have their man. They rush to issue a nationwide travel ban to lock down the borders. They know he might try to run.
And this is where we have to slow down. Because what happens next is one of the most frustrating moments of systemic failure you will ever hear about.
You really have to picture the infrastructure of 1985 here. The order for the travel ban is being communicated over a static-filled telephone line. There are no centralized computer databases.
The commanding officer is reading a name over a radio or phone line to a border agent who is writing it down in a paper ledger. The officer gives the name Abdel Sadiq Yusuf.
But the officer taking the order on the other end mishears it, just slightly. He writes down Abdullah al-Sadiq Yusuf instead of Abdel Sadiq Yusuf.
One single fatal typo. An E becomes a U.
Because of that one wrong letter on a carbon copy paper ledger, when the real Abdel Sadiq Yusuf approaches the border checkpoint to board a plane, the names on the stock list don't perfectly match his travel documents.
The guards look at his passport, look at the list, and just wave him through. He boards a plane and escapes to Egypt.
A single pen stroke costs them the killer.
Meanwhile, Back in Sudan, the second team of investigators finally tracks down the civilian taxi driver from that fateful morning.
And his testimony is harrowing. He confirms everything the crowd saw. He took the screaming girl into his taxi, with the officer following behind.
But mid-route, far away from the prying eyes of the neighborhood crowd, the officer pulled the taxi over.
He ripped Amira out of the cab, forced her onto his motorcycle, ordered the terrified taxi driver to leave immediately, and sped off into the unknown.
When the Sudanese people learn that the prime suspect is an actual police officer who managed to slip out of the country, the outcry is deafening.
They immediately suspect a massive police cover-up. The pressure on the authorities isn't just heavy anymore, it is suffocating.
The authorities are desperate. They reach out to their Egyptian counterparts to locate and arrest Abdel Sadiq in Egypt, but they hit a bureaucratic wall. The suspect has gone completely underground in a foreign country.
So if you can't find the fugitive, what do? You go after his family, they find his sister in Sudan, and they apply immense pressure. But how do you actually do that in the 80s without just tracking cell phones?
What's fascinating here is the sheer physical weight of analog surveillance. They couldn't just tap her smartphone. They had to make their presence known.
They staked out her house. They visited her constantly.
They made it clear to her community, her neighbors, and her employer that she was shielding a fugitive. The psychological toll of having the state security apparatus breathing down your neck day and night is crushing. Finally, she cracks.
She contacts him, manages to extract his secret address in Egypt, and turns that information over to the police. The Egyptian authorities swoop in, arrest him, and he is extradited back to Sudan.
And when they finally have him in the interrogation room, the twisted psychology of this crime comes to light. This was not a random kidnapping or a robbery.
No. Abdel Sadiq and Amira actually knew each other. They had a secret, incredibly intense romantic relationship. But Amira had recently tried to end it. She told him she was moving on to be with someone else.
And his ego simply couldn't handle the rejection. A prominent, beautiful woman leaving him. He became obsessed. He began stalking her, shadowing her movements across the city.
On that morning, he didn't set out to arrest her. He set out to control her. When she resisted, it escalated into the horrific street altercation.
And the interrogation reveals what happened on that fatal ride. After he took her from the civilian taxi, Amira is trapped on the back of his speeding motorcycle, miles from anyone who can help her.
She is fighting, screaming. He is driving recklessly, furiously fast.
And in the chaos of that high-speed struggle, the unthinkable happens. Amira falls off the back of the moving motorcycle. She hits the hard pavement at a tremendous speed, sustaining critical, catastrophic injuries.
Any normal person might see a broken, bleeding woman on the pavement and call an ambulance. But Abdel Sadiq is a police officer who is absent without leave.
He fears for his career. He fears prison. So instead of a hospital, he picks up her body and takes her to the secluded home of a friend of his, a man named Yusuf.
He brings her into Yusuf's house. Abdel Sadiq's uniform is covered in her blood. He tells his friend to watch her while he goes home, changes his clothes, and figures out what to do.
And this is where it takes the darkest turn imaginable.
Wait, so he just leaves Amira there, barely alive?
Yes. And when Abdel Sadiq finally comes back in clean clothes, he finds that while he was gone, Yusuf had assaulted her.
God.
And to make it even more horrific, during the assault, or perhaps right before it, Amira succumbed to her catastrophic injuries.
Are you saying?
She was already dead. Yusuf had assaulted her lifeless body.
It is a level of depravity that is almost impossible to comprehend. Two men, supposed friends, standing over the body of a young woman whose only crime was trying to end a relationship.
The panic sets in for both of them. Yusuf begs for forgiveness from Abdel Sadiq, but their immediate shared problem is the body. They need to make Amira disappear forever.
So they execute a desperate, grim cover-up. Under the cover of darkness, they transport Amira's body to Sudan's largest municipal waste site.
Think about a massive, sprawling landfill serving an entire metropolis. They dump her remains into the garbage, hoping she will be buried under the daily refuse of the city.
When Abdel Sadiq finally confesses to this during the interrogation, the authorities are faced with a monumental task. They have the location, but finding a body in a municipal landfill is like finding a needle in a haystack made of trash.
What follows is a massive, grueling, week-long excavation.
Imagine the conditions. Investigators, aided by heavy machinery and sheer willpower, sifting through literal mountains of garbage under the blistering Sudanese sun. The heat, the smell, the physical exhaustion.
It takes a full week of digging through the refuse of the city before they finally, tragically recover her remains.
The physical evidence is finally there. The confession is on record. Both men, Abdel Sadiq and his friend Yusuf, are arrested and charged.
The public finally has the answers they've been demanding for weeks. But if you're looking for a satisfying, clean stroke of justice, you won't find it here.
Because before the trial can truly conclude, before he can face the full public weight of his crimes and the sentence of the court, Abdel Sadiq Yusuf dies in his prison cell.
It's an incredibly anticlimactic end to a case that consumed a nation. He escapes the final judgment of the law, leaving a permanent aching scar on the Sudanese public consciousness.
The family gets answers, but they are robbed of true accountability.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean? We've walked through the timeline, the terror, the incredible string of coincidences and errors, but I want you, the listener, to think about the underlying mechanics of this tragedy.
This raises an important question about human nature and the systems we rely on. Consider how terrifyingly fragile the barrier between life and death truly is.
Yes, it was a physical fall from a speeding motorcycle that ultimately caused Amira's fatal injuries. But that fall was just the final domino.
She was doomed by a cascading series of tiny, seemingly harmless human errors and psychological traps. Think about the crowd. They outnumbered him. They could have stopped him.
But they were too intimidated by the mere claim of authority to intervene forcefully.
Think about the misplaced trust. A crowd of protective citizens, completely neutralized because one stranger in flashy clothes stepped forward and said, "It's fine, I know him."
We are so wired to look for social proof, to look for a reason to de-escalate a tense situation, that we will accept the word of a total stranger over the desperate screams of a victim.
And then the bureaucracy. The entire apparatus of state security, borders, and flight manifests, all defeated by a single misheard letter over a telephone line. A man walks onto a plane and flies to another country because an E became a U.
It's a haunting reminder that our safety often depends not on the police or the law or the systems we build, but on the unpredictable courage of the strangers standing right next to us.
It really is.
It leaves you with a chilling thought to mull over. Tomorrow, when you are walking down a busy street, look at the crowds of people around you, look at their faces, and ask yourself, if it were you being dragged away, if you were the one screaming for your life in the middle of the street.
Would that crowd demand an ID and physically stop the attacker?
Or would they just compromise, put you in a taxi, and hope for the best?